It was during World War II that the Soviet Union established Gulags. What were Gulags? An acronym for the Soviet Bureaucratic Institution, which translates as the General Directorate of Corrective Labor Camp. Gulags were used as the Soviets' main penal system starting after the Soviet Revolution in 1917. They were started by a man named Joseph Stalin during his campaign to make the Soviet Union into a more industrial power. He believed in totalitarianism, the government having control over more than just government, but all aspects of life. He was believed by many to be a dangerous man and instilled fear into people's lives.
Throughout the Stalin era, gulags were continually used for prisoners who committed robbery, raping, murder, theft including petty theft, political crimes against the Soviet Union, and lateness or unexcused absence to work. Even though some of these crimes seem less severe than others, they are all considered worth sending those who committed them to gulags.
What was it like working in the gulags? Prisoners worked a maximum of 14-hour workdays doing extremely strenuous work. If one was imprisoned in a large camp, they usually had to deal with harsher climates and geographies than those in smaller ones. Many prisoners died from inhalation of ore dust in mines as well as other harmful exposures. They were also barely fed enough food to do the intended work. Prisoners were considered worthless, and if one died, they would just be replaced. The first major project done by Gulag prisoners was the building of the White Baltic Sea Canal, which took place from 1931 to 1933. The canal was 141 miles long and had to be built by over 100,000 Gulag prisoners. They used very few tools, including simple pickaxes, shovels, and makeshift wheelbarrows. Many died during the 20-month process. In the end, the canal was not strong enough, being too narrow and too shallow, to hold ships. Surprisingly, the U.S. was a provider of tools to the Gulag as well. The worst camp of all was called Kolyma. It was greatly feared by prisoners of the Gulags because it was always winter there and it was completely isolated, not being able to get there by land.
What was life like living in a gulag? Imagine being surrounded by barbed wire fences and guards and towers watching your every move. One would sleep in overcrowded barracks that were poorly heated and smelled horrible. A bed consisted of a wooden platform covered by a poorly stuffed straw mattress. Fed only by the amount of work one did, many prisoners competed for food and supplies, which led to violent outbreaks. Plus, all prisoners were watched by fellow prisoners, informers, who reported all misconduct to camp authority, which could lead to harsh punishment.
Women in the Gulags. Women were often treated with disrespect in Gulags. Workers, guards, and even other prisoners raped or abused women. As a result of these actions, women often found a camp husband to protect them from these events. Occasionally, they would put their newborn children into orphanages and most likely never see them again.
The fall of gulags. After Stalin died in 1952, the amount of gulags decreased but did not go away until after the Gorbachev era. It was then that it completely faded in Russia. Gulags increased internment camp uses as the idea spread from Russia to other countries. Most internment camps were used for prisoners of war or for certain groups of people that were discriminated by society, such as during the Holocaust.
Internment camps during and after Gulags. Japanese internment camps in the U.S. Before the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7th of 1941, Japanese Americans lived freely in the United States. Even though they could live like everyone else, they were still subjected to discrimination and often lived in close communities with other people of Japanese descent. They also kept separated from American culture. After the war between the United States and Japan, the U.S. government decided that all Japanese people living in the U.S. threatened the country. Because of this, the government created Japanese internment camps. Even those who were U.S. citizens were forced out of their homes and into the camps. Before put into permanent camps, the Japanese were forced to live in old port stalls or poorly constructed barracks. The living situations were unsanitary and very difficult to live in. The U.S. government promoted activities in the camps only to prevent any rebellious actions from occurring and keep prisoners busy. Those who worked in the camps did get paid and were able to keep their money. After internment camps were shut down, the Japanese struggled to go back to their old lives because they were left with nothing. Even though the Japanese internment camps may not have been as brutal as Gulags, they were still an unfortunate event in our history that should have been prevented.
North Korean prison camps. In the 1980s and 90s, there were North Korean prison camps. There were up to 200 prisoners, both children and adults, being held in political prison camps. The two largest camps were Camp 15 and 16. They covered 260 square miles of land. The prison camps were the same as gulags because all of the prisoners are forced to work and are treated very poorly. There were also many deaths that happened during 1980 to 1990. One of the officers working in the camp saw how some of the prisoners were killed. Some of the prisoners dug their own grave and were killed by hammer blows to the neck. Others were killed by strangulation or being beaten to death with wooden sticks. If someone tried to escape, the guards would find them, take them back to the camp, tie them to wooden posts, and shoot them 3 times in the head, chest, and feet. Now, these camps still take place in present-day North Korea.
Gulag's impact on Russian society. As a result of Gulags, the USSR, or the Soviet Union, was greatly impacted. Many struggled living in the Gulags, and even after Gulags no longer existed, people still had to deal with its ideas and influence on society. Today, common phrases and expressions have lasted from the time of Gulag. One that is used a lot is, "My name is nothing, my family name is nobody." This is what prisoners would say as they entered Gulag. They also used a hand sign to show one that they are better than another. This was adapted from the Gulags. Not only did Gulags influence language, but also music and art in Russia. Songs were created about what life was like in the Gulag, as well as paintings and poems. Some wrote about the people they saw that were released from Gulags and their experience within them.